I actually embroidered these eyes on this doll in 10 to 12 minutes. I have no idea what I was doing, so that means that it's easy and you guys can do it too. Stay tuned. As always, do me a solid, click that subscribe button. That would be so awesome if you guys can do that. So here are the supplies. I got the embroidery for the eyes, the eye color, the pupil, and the whites of the eye. You're also going to need a nice pair of scissors. And then I have these small ones for like really precise cuts. You're also going to need a needle. I have 2 types just in case. So let's get started. Not sure if this is needed or not, but I like to start with a little Sharpie because this is going to be covered up anyway. I like to mark where the pupils should be. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. All right, I think that looks good. I've already started with a threaded needle with black to start with the pupil. And I like to start in the back because what I would like to do is start knotting it in the back because all that's going to be covered with hair, which is going to be blue, as you can tell. So what I'm doing is I'm starting to just stitch a little, like 2 little black dots for the pupils. And this part is the really easy part. We're going to be doing this now and throughout. When we finish one eye, we go and we pull the needle through to the other eye. Now we're going to grab the actual eye color and doing the same thing as we did with the pupils. We're going to start with the needle coming through the back of the head out through the eye there. So now what we're doing is we're going to be working next to the black part, which is the pupil. And this is my remix version of a daisy chain stitch. I didn't exactly do a daisy chain, but I was supposed to, but it still seems like it will work. I just needed a stitch there so I can work around the pupil part. So I'm going to do a series of quote-unquote daisy chains, or my remix daisy chain, around the pupil. So I'm going to do 3 of those stitches around the pupil and go from there. Okay, so I have my 3 daisy chains around a pupil there. And now I'm going to basically just whip stitch around those actual daisy chain stitches. That's the reason why it doesn't really need to be a daisy chain, because you're not going to be able to see them. We just needed some stitches there so that we can whip stitch around them to give it a more fortified look of what an eye should look like on a doll, I guess. Does that make sense? I don't know. All I know is that we're gonna keep whip stitching around those daisy chains. At this point, I realized that I really wanted to put a knot at the beginning at the back of the head, but I didn't. So the eye felt a little loose. So I just put another stitch in it, going across the eye into the other side of the eye. So I pushed that stitch through to the back of the head, meeting up with that first yarn or the first thread piece that we started with. And I used my pliers at this moment because sometimes when you're trying to pull that needle through, it's kind of hard on your hands because it's just so skinny. So grab yourself a pair of pliers. Once you pull that thread through, tie it in a knot. Doesn't matter how many knots you use. I like to use a lot of knots. I like to use too many knots. But then again, I kind of think that you can't use too many knots. Never mind. All right, let's start on that second eye. So you're starting from the back, you just pull or push your needle through to the front to the other pupil. Try to get as close as possible as you can to it. Once you pull that through, you can start doing your daisy chains around the second pupil. Now you can start whip stitching around those daisy chains. Now we're going to start on the whites of the eyes. We're doing the same concept, starting at the back of the head, pushing the needle through to the front. Now we're going to start working around the iris, which would give us the whites of the eyes. Doing the same thing, we're going to start with our daisy chains, but in white this time. And we're going to do about 3 or 4 of those. It depends on how big you have your eye. Just continue doing it around the iris part. Now start doing your whip stitch around those daisy chains you just did. Now push your needle over to the other side and start doing your daisy chain around that iris. Now start whip stitching around those daisy chains. And like we did already, push that needle through to the back and tie your knots. As many knots as you would like. And as you can see so far, yes, she is a she. You can see the boobs there. She's starting to stare into our soul. Now the next thing we're gonna do with the white, so we're gonna put a little bit of a sparkle in her eye. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna push that needle through and push it through where the pupil is. We might need to use our pliers because there's a lot of stitches there we have to go in between. And we're gonna pull that through. And we're gonna do one little tiny simple stitch. It doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be even like on the other side. We just need to have a little bit of stitch there because I don't think anybody's gonna look that closely to it. So you might have to push your needle through using your pliers. Sometimes I like to slowly pull the thread through. And again, for some reason, I like it. I think I'll keep it. So now you just knot that off with as many knots as you'd like. Next, we're gonna grab some black because we're gonna make it look like she has makeup on, a little bit of eyeliner. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna push that needle all the way through to the front, but we're gonna go to the top of the eye where we haven't been stitching. And we're gonna start doing some daisy chains across the top of her eye. And like we did with all our other stitches, we start to whip stitch around those daisy chains. So I did another stitch along the side of her eye to make it look like she kind of has winged eyeliner on. So as always, I whip stitched around that daisy chain. And I pushed the needle all the way through to the other side, doing the same thing, going across the top of the eye, do a daisy chain, and then I'm going to whip stitch around that daisy chain. To even out the two eyes, I stuck another little tiny daisy chain there, and then I started to whip stitch around that daisy chain. And I started to realize that that stitch was kicked out a little too much. So I inserted my needle behind this stitch that's out of line, and I poked my needle through closer to the eye where I want it to land. And I'm going to pull this needle through. Now I'm going to push that stitch closer to the eye, and I'm going to poke that needle through, wrapping the stitch and holding it in place. And now I'm going to end that eye right here. And it turned out pretty well. I like it. and I'm going to end it with many, many knots. So here's the result. This wasn't supposed to be a professional technique. This was just my almost okay way to put eyes on my dolls. And like I said, it only took 12 minutes at the most to do, and it's super easy. I hope this video was helpful. Remember to subscribe, like, and comment. Now she can just stare into your soul.